So welcome to Buddy's Designs. This is a live stream for Ustream.tv and also for YouTube for people to watch at their leisure. I'm playing in my Daydreams colour book, and I had a bit of a disaster with my pens and trying to use them because they're really for watercolour. So I've decided that I would play in my gouache pots, and then my daughter brought my laptop. I think they're about £2 from IKEA, and I normally tilt my phone on that one on my laptop, and I just thought actually that was quite perfect to sit at a slight angle because most of those are nearly all dried anyway. And I've got my water here. Now really I should have this on my left side, so I should be kind of painting like this. Actually, I'll probably do that. So I've got my big double water pot. You need a lot of water if you're using gouache. But that means that I can just kind of it's not very wet, but it gives a very flat kind of Disney effect, and I've managed to mix the colour of one of the paintbrushes almost exactly. So I use Viridian Green and Phthalo, I think that was a Phthalo, a very cool blue, cobalt blue, and if you mix them together you get this kind of really nice kind of minty colour, dark mint. So in theory if you add white to it you would get mint. And I've never made mint colour before, so I was quite impressed with myself. So I love the colour. So I thought if I just tilt like that, maybe slightly better light. It's my sweetie jar, which the lid wasn't on my sweetie jar. Not clever. The light should be slightly better. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be mixing here. Now these are dry. I'm probably going to spray them. I've got my little spray pump. Now it looks quite expensive, that, but it's from the pound shop with the disinfectant sprays that you used to be able to get for hand sanitizers, and I think you could get 10 for £1, and I bought them because they went in the kids' pencil cases at school, and so I've had them a long time. So when they were empty I washed them out and filled them in water, and they make fab little spray, and they're very good sprayers. Just lost something off there. They're very, very good sprayers, but it's always a good idea to kind of keep everything away when you're spraying. Now gouache, you need to really reconstitute it. You shouldn't really be using it like this, but this is for a colour book, so I'm not going to be as precious with it as perhaps I would be normally. And I do want to have it flat, so I'm going to very carefully clean this and put it on the underside. It's just to keep it off my colour page. So it's still flat, so it's fine, I can still use it. I've put too much water in there really. Gouache doesn't really want too much water, but I'm not used to using a spray, and I'm not used to using these colours, so it's all fairly new to me. Try not to contaminate the colours, because these were my daughter's. It doesn't want to drip, so actually it's probably quite good. That's the consistency you need really. You do not want it to drip, only one drip off. So that's probably quite a good consistency, like pouring cream. And I am going to keep that away from that one. I don't want them contaminating each other. I do have a bit of white in there actually. So now I seem to have got a very pale one, but actually I quite like it. I've got a very pale one. And I can't bear to contaminate my new colours. So these are fairly cheapy ones. They're not the Winsor & Newton gouache. So again, it doesn't want to drip off. That's how the consistency of cream is what we want. There's quite a lot there, but if you're doing a big cartoon, or if you're using them as a storyboard, and if you're doing them as an illustrator, then you do need, I'm actually going to dry that completely and then just get it damp, just barely damp. You need to mix a lot of colour, because chances are you may not mix that colour again. You see, I've still not got that exact colour that I had the first time. But gouache gives a very flat, very quick way of working. But I'm just going to finish this page because I quite like that. I'm probably going to make this a bit stronger. And if you vary the colour very slightly, it's going to give a bit of variation. So again, that's what we want. If it's too green, you can just put a touch of blue back into that. And then when we look at this, it's gone back to that quite nice. I would say that's almost a phthalo blue. Maybe I've just made a phthalo blue. I'll have a look at that. So I'll zoom in and then we can see a little bit better the colours. So I've got varying degrees of my daughter's gouache from uni. They're not the Derwents, sorry, the Winsor & Newtons. I think they're just cheapy ones. That's student grade. Now I've got to move my sweet jar back so I can move my. There we go. So you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to be working there. So I'm working with this number 6 Pearl Master, Art Master Pearl Series 11, and for gouache this is perfect, and it's not giving out too much paint, and yet it's holding quite a lot of paint. If it was water it would flood out, but because it's colour it's holding itself, but it does, if you can see, give a really nice neat point, so you can be quite precise with it, so you don't need, if you always work the right way around. And any good artist will tell you to turn the page, always work with your work so you're working like this, you've got more control. So of course I'm not doing that and I'm going over the lines, but it's just too difficult at the moment. that's why sometimes a photocopy is quite good, because you can just turn a page and it's quite easy because it's not in a book. Turning a book round is sometimes not an option. And you don't need to wet the brush, just go back in to get some more paint. And it has a really nice, almost slick effect. It just goes on. So if you did this with a watercolour, every time you went over it you'd get a darker and darker line, but this goes down very flat. This is gouache. It's not watercolour, it's a gouache. Now if I just put a tiny bit, where was I? There. I can have a tiny bit of a shadowy effect in that one. Oops. And so they're a little bit opaque. To best describe them is an opaque watercolour. And if you were quite desperate to try this without buying them, you could put some white gouache to coloured watercolour, and you would get a cheat version of a gouache. And then you could have a bit of a play with some watercolours, making them into a gouache. And if you like the opacity and like the feel of them and the look of them, and they kind of give you that graphic, thick, not that beautiful, soft, blended watercolour, but really kind of graphic, Disney kind of look, cartoony look, and they're used for graphics and anime and all sorts of things. Very, very, and illustrations on books, because they're opaque, so you can paint over the top. They're not wishy-washy like watercolours, and I think they were first created for illustrations because you could photocopy them. They're very matte, and so you could photocopy them and it was good for printing, so I think that's why they used them originally. But fantastic for colour books. Fantastic for colour books. And they feel, when you're painting, they feel like you've got a marker, because the colour is always going to be exactly the same, just like you've got a felt tip as a kid and you're colouring in, every leaf is going to be this colour because this is the colour you had on your felt pen. So they've got that kind of vivacity, very creative kind of thick colour, that, you know, a marker. If you were colouring in with a marker, that's what it's like. So it doesn't matter how many times I go over that, I've really only got that one flat shade, and I really like that. Again, it's a different way of working, but I really like it. And they do give you that kind of graphic-y look. But they're very, very well behaved. They don't need a lot of water. So they're perfect for a colour book. And very quick. And using a marker, again, isn't an option for me. I don't do markers very well. Some of the fatter markers I'm not so bad with. But of course, all this bounce isn't a hard marker tip, it's a little soft brush. Again, if I did want this tiniest bit of darkness, and again this brush is definitely going to hold all that colour to make sure that I've got enough for this big leaf. I mean, you can mix them and you can change you can change them, but this is the easiest and what they were designed to do. They were designed for illustrators to colour black and white images, so they then could be photocopied. And printed. And the nice thing about this is what you can do is you can draw on a marker, on a water a permanent marker, an image on acetate, and then you can turn it over, and you can colour it in gouache. In fact, I might do that as a for my Bunny Designs logo. And then when you turn it back, you've got a shiny side, and of course you've only gone up to the marker, so you may have gone over on the other side, but the black marker hides the fine detail, and it looks like a perfect black coloured image on shiny acetate. And it's very matte, it's very black, it's very flat, it's what we call a flat colour, so it's not like this, it's just very flat, so it's perfect for lettering. And so I think I might do that actually for my Bunny's Designs. I think I might do that. If we do it on acetate, I did buy some acetate, I don't want to put it, it's my problem, I buy all sorts of things, and it dries very quickly. And again, we're not using a lot of water, so perfect for colour books. And perfect if you can just use a brush. So I've got this flower in the middle. I don't know what that is. Stop. So thanks for joining me. I hope everybody's okay. It's almost lunchtime, I think, in the UK. The problem is when I'm doing this I lose track of time. And thank you for watching on YouTube. So if you find it a little bit boring, do fast forward it, or skip bits. But I just wanted to show just how easy this particular thing is. Now I've got some kind of editing thing as well, so maybe I can fast forward things so they're not quite as boring as they look. But it's nice to see something in real time, because you can realise sometimes how long things take and sometimes how quick things take. This is going to be fairly quick, this. And sometimes that's quite nice as well, because I can spend days and days and days on a colour page, and sometimes I like to be fairly quick, and this gouache is definitely going to be quick, and yet I still want a decent page. I don't want it looking like I've just thrown paint at it, but I want a different look. And that's what I like about colour pages. You can either spend a long time, or you can just chill out if you haven't got long. And different books make you behave in different ways. There are some books that I want to spend absolute hours on. The Harry Potter books, for instance, the Kirby Roseannes. I don't really want to do them in 10 minutes. Whereas some of these pages, I love the images, but all the work's done. I can't better this drawing. I can't make it out of this world. It's just going to be a page in a colour book. And the colours can be interesting, but some other books you can do some quite spectacular work. And so of course you want to take longer time over them, but you don't always want to spend a long time, so that's sometimes quite good to have different books and different mediums shout out different things to me. I think that's that leaf. So I just thought you might like to see how quickly it is to make this gouache. And I think it's about the same as watercolour, a bit cheaper, but it's definitely wonderful. If you wanted the cadmium red from Winsor & Newton, it's £6.60 for a tube. If you wanted the cheaper red, like a Winsor red, it's a little bit cheaper. And then some of the other reds that I've chosen are kind of like £3.30 for a 14mm tube, which I think is this one. But they go a long way, and you don't really traditionally use them like this, but I've put them in this pan purely for me to stay at my desk or on a flat surface at home. These are not designed to go away with me. I've put my Winsor & Newton ones into my new Stay Wet palette. These are my colours that I will be taking away with me, and I don't want those to dry out quite as much. So I'm going to mix some more of this paint because I just haven't got quite enough. Oh, Alfie's having a wander. Let's see if I can reconstitute enough for some leaves. Adding water is going to make it a little bit lighter, but not much, because it's very, very strong colours. It's the pigment again, it's a pigment. It's a different binder. It does have gum arabic, the same as a watercolour, but then it has a thickener, is probably like a chalk. It has some kind of thickener which makes it opaque. So it's exactly like watercolour, but it then has, which is why you mix it exactly like a watercolour, but it does have well, I'm mixing it like a watercolour, which for a colour book's fine. If you were to do it traditionally, you want to make it in little pots. But when I use my gouache on a watercolour paper, I will show you how I mix it for that. This is not the traditional way. This is how to use it in a colour book, because you're not going to use a lot of water and you're not using it on watercolour paper. But it's very similar to when you're working with watercolours in a colour book anyway. You cannot use a lot of water. So I'm actually just reconstituting this with water, and I'm getting away with it. It's getting slightly paler, but I don't really want to mix any more of this colour, if I can help it. And I don't think it's going to be too far away from its original, so I think we're just going to finish this bit off down here. and that leaf is curled over, but I haven't really done anything to it, just left it curled over. And this particular brush can get about 2 or 3 leaves out. It holds quite a lot of paint without being too wet. So I'll just finish this particular page and then I'll zoom out and we'll mix another colour. I think yellow primroses might look quite nice, although I think these are supposed to be little pink ones. I'm just getting a little bit wetter, so it's not brilliant for the page, but as long as I'm fairly careful. And it is a bit paler, but it was so vibrant to start with, may just have got away with it. I think that's the last one. Just have a quick look. There's always one hiding. Yeah, there's one hiding there, look. So wash the brush out, and this is such a vibrant blue that it's definitely not going to be washed out in 2. So I'll very quickly zoom out and show what that looks like and how vibrant that colour is. So they're economical as well, which is another good reason to use them. They're quite economical to use. So they're a little bit paler at this side, but I think we've got away with it. But very quick. So we've got, could do the flowers next. I do have some brown there, so actually what I'm going to probably do is to reconstitute this. But I've got to be careful because that's what I'm using on this page here. And I need a pink sticker for that one. I've just lost my pink stickers. I had them there. They were there somewhere. I keep them handy. So what I do is I put a pink sticker at the back as a bookmark. So at the top I know that that page isn't finished. And it makes it easier to find other pages that you are working on. If it's finished, it gets a sticker at the bottom, so the cat's finished. So I need a sticker at the back of this one. and these don't tend not to damage pages as well. This is all dry now. It's all dried, so again, I really like that. Somewhere is that does have a sticker, but it's one of those big stickers that's not particularly very good. Oh, I could have sworn I started another page in this. I started that one as well and forgot that one. I think that's pastels. I haven't got one under Mr. Frog, so we'll put one next to Mr. Frog. So I thought I must have done them all. I thought I was starting another one, but I must have. Oh, it was in the Harry Potter one. That's what's confused me. I'm going to use gouache in this book. And that's the same. So that brown I didn't want to use because I've used it here. So I'm actually not going to use this brown because I want it for that tree and that tree there. And if I use that, I might not be able to match it up. So I'm not going to use that brown. And I'm not going to play with that green either. I'm going to leave that because that's the leaf green here. So I'm going to mix a different colour so that I can keep that. How are we doing for time? It's about 30 minutes, so that's quite good. I'll just do the flowers. We've got a bee there, and a bee. A couple of bees. I think these are going to be kind of like pink. I had brown on there, didn't I? So if I have a look on here, I've got a pinky red and I've got a pinky purple, and I think I quite like that. It might have to be that kind of this kind of red. Now this is extremely vivid and I don't want it this colour. So again, a good idea to have a bit of card or paper. Now it's going to go really nicely with this, but I quite fancy having two tones, I think, on this maybe. I think it does need a little bit of a tone down. Oopsie. You have to be so careful. So I've mixed some white in, and that's toned that pink down quite a lot. So I quite like that. It's quite a nice pink now. It's not quite in your face. It's just still bright but toned down. And I've got a nice amount on that, so that's really the consistency you need it. So it will get one drip, but it won't drip constantly off your brush. That's the correct consistency. There's probably a bit too much on the brush, so I'm actually just going to pat a little bit off. And I think I might just do a flat colour on here, and then what I may do later is go back when this is dried. I may go back and put another coating over as a shadow area. I think that would look quite good. But I kind of want this kind of display page really kind of Disney and bright, shall we say. And kind of fantasy. And those colours are definitely that. So I'll zoom back in and you can see how this colour is going to react. And I've still got quite a lot of paint on the paintbrush. But as long as I don't leave it, it can't dry up there because it'll come down to haunt you at a later date. So it's a good idea to kind of get rid of it all. But again, if you touch the edge, you can manipulate some more out. But this is where I do wash the brush out, and I do waste a little bit of paint, because in my heart of hearts I cannot ruin my brushes. I've probably set up some paper on the desk so I can scribble out some colour. But it's so well behaved, it's just like having a marker in your hand. It's just well behaved. But I am just going to clean the brush. Thank you, darling. And then pick up half a brush of colour and work with that, just that end of the brush. It's quite nice. And it doesn't matter how many times you go over it, it's still flat. And again, that's just having that. As a child, it just reminds me of having a marker and doing those really flat areas with a felt pen, because that's all we had really to colour with. Pencils, crayons and felt pens. And quite a nice peaceful way to work again, kind of like that. Just no pen tops to take on and off, just dabbing into that paint. And I normally have mine on the right side because to move my shoulder hurts me, so I normally have everything so I can just move. So really, I would be better moving everything so that it was handy for me. And this paintbrush has a really nice point to it. I'd forgotten how nice they were. And these are quite cheap. They're £1.60, £1.50, £2. They're not more than £2. Thank you, darling. I hope he's just made me a wonderful cup of tea. So it's always a bit difficult in these creases on books. But of course, it wouldn't be a colour book think you can get very large books that have single pages, so you don't need to do this, but I kind of like that pink next to that. I think I've made phthalo green. I think that's like a phthalo green. Sorry, a phthalo blue. In fact, I could have made phthalo turquoise. So that's another one that needs to go in my colour book, so that I can see these combinations and think, no, they don't work, or yes, they do work, or if I did them again, would I change them, make them softer colours? Very vibrant colours, these. And one colour, just go for it. Again, nice easy way to work. Every petal is almost identical. And again, that's kind of Disney, cartoony, fantasy, everything's the same, so very unrealistic, which is again against my comfort zone. But it's very therapeutic, is this. This is just very, very quick, very simple. Oh, hi Claudia, welcome to Bunny's Designs. I'm working in Gouache in Daydreams, and I've mixed, what did I mix? I mixed Viridium Green gouache with like a phthalo, a cyan green, a very pale, pale blue, very pale blue. And I've kind of got this phthalo turquoisey blue-green colour, so quite impressed with myself really. And then the pink is quite a bright pink. I might do a colour swatch. When I've finished these, I will very quickly go through the colours that I have in my palette. And there's some quite cheap ones. But I had a bit of a disaster. I tried to play with the graphic pens, watercolour pens, and they're really they have these wonderful bright colours, but they're for really wet on wet. So I'm going to use them on watercolour paper to do some quite vibrant butterflies. I think that's a petal. Yeah, they all have 5 petals. That's got 4. This is a petal. What was I going to say? Brain and gear. So I was inspired by that butterfly book to create my own butterfly art in watercolours, but that will be on watercolour paper, and I will be using the graphics on those, the graphic pens from Derwent, because they're not very precise and they're too vibrant, so I'm going to have to use them wet on wet, as they were designed to be used, not in a colour book. So there would be kind of splash on wet, there would be, you can splash them splatter them, water them. You can do lots and lots of things with them on watercolour, but I'm going to do them roughly in a butterfly shape. So I'm going to put pink in the middle, and I think I'm going to put, oh, that would be green on the outside then, wouldn't it, there. So, really quick way of working. But I don't want to make a mess, but I wanted some kind of vibrant colours. I worked the other day with my Derwent art bars, and they were really, really bright and vibrant, and it's kind of turned my head a little bit now. I've gone into kind of bright mode, and then that colour book with those butterflies, not the colour book, the butterfly book that I have, the big book that we're having a look at last week. I think that's inspired me to do some watercolour art. So this is gouache, and this is opaque. So it's basically a watercolour, and it has the same binder. So it's a watercolour. It has the same binder, but then it's added kind of a chalk to make it opaque. And it's just like painting with a giant marker. Everything's flat. Every colour is flat. Doesn't matter what time I go over it. I get the same colour. And I do quite like that. And again, brings me back to my graphics days. Kind of vibrant fantasy. You're just going basically for colour. So I've added a bit of white to this this pink, because it was too pinky, and I thought just to turn it down slightly, but it's still quite a bright pink even though it's got white in it. So I've mixed quite a lot, but if you're going to use gouache, you do need to mix a fair amount. Because if you're, say, doing a storyboard or you're doing illustration and you've got 8 pages, you've got to have the dog the same colour in every one, or the flowers. If it's the same scene, the flowers have all got to be the same. So if you get used to mixing enough, because the chances are you won't. You won't manage to mix exactly the same. So if anybody's got any questions, pop them in caps. Very quickly working my way around. So I might go down and put a little bit of a shadow down when I've finished, but the idea is this is very quick and very simple. So the next time I go over the middle bit, it'll be a shadow. But you can put white gouache. Again, this is the beauty of gouache. You can work over the top of it. And as long as you don't rub too much, you can paint over the top. Something you can't do with watercolour, because this is opaque. If that makes sense. Move that one across there. So it's just like having a giant marker. Dries very flat, and I kind of like that. As I said, this is kind of very fantasy, kind of Disney, cartoony, if that's the right word. Animated probably is a better word. But as I say, there are other books that I want to spend a lot of time on. I mean, how dramatic were the poppies that I did, and they took next to no time. It was all to do with colour. So let this dry. And this is such a big brush, as I say, it's such a good brush. It has the fine, very fine, precise tip, and yet it holds quite a lot of colour. But if it was just water, that would flood out. But because it's colour, it's sitting there quite nicely waiting for me to tease it out. And then the two little buds at the bottom here, three little buds. And I just added the tiniest amount of water just to get me that last three buds out. Oopsie, and I've missed a bud. There. Missed a bud. There we go. So that took about about 50 minutes. So that's how bright the pink was, really in your face, and I just made it that a little bit paler. It would have been too bright. Oh, thank you, Claudia. Yeah, if I'd have left it that bright pink, it would have fought too much with the green that I made. But you know that's most of it's going to be dry now. Just I didn't want to touch that. Yeah, it's all dried. Again, it's very quick drying. And I asked my daughter to bring her colours back. So of course I've got my boring colour scheme, which is, I've put it on here, which is yellow, pale yellows, cold bright yellows to warm yellows, oranges, orangey reds, reddy pinks, purples, purpley blues, blues, cold blues, greens, dark greens, and then 2 or 3 browns in there. And that's not, and then I put black, and then I found Prussian blue, which is very dark blue, so I put that in here, black. That's my mixing white, and then you have a permanent white, which is for highlights. So one is quite good for mixing, which is why I mixed it with that. The other one is probably more opaque and more expensive, and you use that for highlights. And that's the one that you can put over watercolours and all sorts. So I mean, I was inspired by the watercolour pencils, but they hurt my hands. So I did this yesterday, and there is a video, 3 videos coming out, because it took 3, I think. Can't find it now. And that kind of was quite bright. So I'm obviously going into brighter colours. So I did that yesterday with my art bars, my Derwent art bars, and I really love the colours. I really love those colours, and that kind of minty green, that phthalo green kind of got into me. So I mixed it. I mixed Viridian green, which is that very deep dark green. I think it's called Viridian, and I mixed it with the palest blue that I have. So these were from this pot here. My daughter brought them back from uni. So I'll very quickly go through what we've got in here. And I was very naughty. I've got to buy us some more. This is, and this one actually is the nicest one. This is the one that hasn't dried as well. But, oh no, this is the thicker one. This was an original set of designer gouache, which is the one I've just bought. The runny one is the De La Rowney. It's Viridian. Viridian hue is that deep green, and the pinky red, I'm pretty sure. So put them all together. This is called like Essentials Royal Gala. Royal Langnickel. And this one was rose, and I'm pretty sure that's what was rose was. Let me just have a double check. That was the purple one. The De La Rowney one is the one that's runnier. It's not dried as good as the other one. The other one came out thicker, but you have a quick look. Vermilion is the orangey red. A vermilion is a cold red. There was mauve, and I have a pair of pliers to take the top off. Oh, that's the purple mauve. So, and this is the one that's probably going to crack the most, then the mauve. Yeah, that's the runnier one, is the mauve. Let me have a look. What was the red? Crimson red. I think. Oops, I shouldn't do that either. That's the red, the pinky red, crimson red. which is, I think that one's magenta, that pink red, which just, this is crimson, this is the bright red one, this one. So the Daler Rowney ones are the ones that haven't dried, and the thicker ones that came out like a thick gouache were Essentials Gouache. Okay, they were cheap and cheerful. Just put those back in there for her. So I filled that past that with that. I'm just looking for the pinky red one. It must be, I think it's in this set. Oh, the blue is Cerulean Blue. That's this one. Oh, was that one? Oh no, that's that one. So I've got two Cerulean Blues, and if you look, one's slightly darker. So the Cerulean Blue that I used was the Daler Rowney. And they're quite cheap and cheerful, those. But I did want to leave her some in the tubes, because she's going back to uni. So she's only got half tubes now. But as I said, I did give her the original set of Winsor and Newton. So, but oops. But for my colour book, they're perfect. They're perfect. This one is a crimson red. That's the red. It's not the pink. The pink is something else. That's the mauve. So I didn't find the pink. So titanium white is the thingy white. Ah, is it primary red? Yeah, primary red is the pink. Is it the pink? No, it isn't. I think it's magenta. I'm pretty sure it's magenta from the cheapy set. It looks like a magenta. Ow, I can't get the tops off very well. No, rose. That's the very pale pink one that I use. This is rose. Oops, there. That's rose. Don't know why I took some more out. So it's quite a good set to get you going, is that, and that there'd only be £2 or £3. The set I got from Winsor & Newton, I think, was 30 some, I think. This is sap green, which is, I couldn't get it out of that end. I like sap green. It's a pale green that I got out of there. So bless her, she let me hold all those colours that I'd sent to uni with her, and she does use them. But then I thought, I've put in, this is what I bought for mine, and I do have those colours as well, and I've mixed some of my colours together, but mine are still running. And I want to use these as different watercolours if I can, but I wanted to have a play with these, but I'm still quite impressed with the colours. So that's the end of part 1, and that's, when I find it, that's my gouache page. Thank you for watching.